Okay, we want to continue depreciation by looking at the next method of the double declining balance method. In the double declining balance method, we are looking at, well, I say double declining balance, but when we're looking at double declining balance, we're looking at a 200% rate. And what I mean by that, let's look at the steps first, and that'll kind of help you. So we have 3 steps. So our first step that we want to look at when we're looking at the double declining balance rate is first to determine what is our straight line rate, and then we're going to double it. So our straight line rate, what you want to do is take 100% and you want to divide it by your years, your useful life. And then our problem we've been looking at, we have 4 years of useful life, and so that would give us a 25% straight line rate. So we would be depreciating the asset 25% a year using the straight line rate. And so our step number 2 is basically we want to double that rate. So you want to get your double declining balance rate. And we do that by taking our 25% and we double it. So that's that 200% I'm referring to. This could be a 150% declining balance rate, and then that would be, we would multiply it times 1.5 if we were doing that 150%. But we're going to double it, and so that means we're going to have a double declining balance rate of 50%. Important number. Then our last step is how do we get our depreciation, basically. What is our depreciation expense? How do we get to the actual depreciation expense? And we do so by taking whatever your beginning book value is, and then we multiply it times the double declining balance rate. And in this problem, that was 50%. 50%. So let's look at our problem that we kind of continue to work on. And if you remember, the problem that we're looking at in 2015, we had a asset that we purchased that cost us $154,000. So that's my beginning book value. And then I'm going to multiply that times my double declining balance rate, which is 50%. And so, therefore, my depreciation expense for this first year would be $77,000. And if I'm tracking my accumulated depreciation, that means the first year accumulated depreciation would be simply $77,000. Okay? And so then I get a new book value, because if I take my original cost, remember book value is cost minus accumulated depreciation. So if I take my cost minus my accumulated depreciation of $77,000, so at the beginning of 2016 I have a new book value. So I take that beginning book value, I multiply it times the 50% again, and in that year I get $38,500 for my depreciation expense. So that would be my depreciation expense in year 2016. So if I take the $77,000 for the previous year plus my new $38,500, I get accumulated depreciation of $115,500. And so in 2017, my beginning book value, remember book value is cost of $154 minus the accumulated depreciation, I get a beginning book value of $38,500. Once again, I multiply that times my 50%, and I get $19,250. And when I take the $19,250 and I add it to my 115 previous accumulated depreciation, I get $134,750. Now, I don't know if you remember, but we talked about our depreciable basis. And if you remember, our depreciable basis for this asset is the $154,000 cost minus the $25,000 salvage value. So I get a depreciable basis of $129,000. So therefore, my accumulated depreciation cannot be more than the 129,000 depreciable basis. And so that would mean my last year of depreciation would have to be 13,500. And you say, how do you get that? Well, if I have 115,500 accumulated depreciation in 2016, and for 2017 my accumulated depreciation can't be more than 129, that leaves me only 13,500 to depreciate. So that is your, what we call the double declining balance method of depreciation. So we looked at three methods. We looked at the straight line method, we looked at the units of production method, and we looked at our double declining balance method. And so let's keep going here. Last two things. We have partial years depreciation. And so everything we've done thus far in the examples has been as if we had 12 months of depreciation. But we often have partial years depreciation. So if I have an asset that I purchased on April the 1st of 2015, and I have an asset that cost me $280,000, and it had a salvage value of $40,000, and it was a 5-year asset, then I would get depreciation of $48,000 per year. But that's assuming 12 months. So if I bought it in April, I didn't have it for 12 months. I had it April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. I only had it for 9 months. And so in 2015, my first year, my depreciation would be $48,000 times 9/12. So I would only get 9 months of that. And so my first year depreciation in that instance would be only $36,000. Now this partial year depreciation, it affects the straight line method, which I just showed you. And it also affects the double declining balance method. It does not affect the units of production method, because remember, it's based off of how many units you produce. And so let's just look at what the difference would be for that first year depreciation. Now, the 2016 depreciation of the straight line method would be back to the $48,000, because in that instance, I would have a full year in 2016. It was 2015 I had a partial year. So my double declining balance method, if we look at the same problem, remember we start out by getting our rate, 100% divided by 5 years. And if so, the straight line rate would be 20%. And so I'm going to double that. 20% times 2 gives me a 40% double declining balance rate. Gives me a 40% double declining balance rate. And so then in 2015, remember we start with our beginning balance, and this was $280,000 was our beginning balance on this asset, and we would multiply it times 40%. That's my double declining balance rate. So I would get a depreciation of $112,000. But remember, I only had it for 9 months. And so I would have to take that 112 times 9 months, 9/12. And so my depreciation expense for the first year would be $84,000. Okay? And so remember, I decrease my balance, book value every year. I'm just kind of doing it in a little different format. And so my new book value in 2016 would be $196,000. And so in 2016, I multiplied times my 40%, and the depreciation for the second year would be $78,400. I wouldn't have to, because I had it for a full 12 months in that year. So just keep in mind, partial year depreciation, either in the year of purchase or the year of disposal, affects straight line method and your double declining balance method. It does not affect the units of production, because it's based on how many units you actually produce. Okay. So we can also, throughout the process of having an asset, have a change in our estimates, because remember, we're making estimates as far as how many years we think we're going to use the asset, as far as our salvage value. So we're making estimates in doing so. And so when you have a situation that you need to change an estimate. Okay, so let's say that I have an asset that cost me $23,860, and that it had a salvage value of $2,400, and that it was a 4-year asset. And we're going to assume I bought it in January, and so I would get depreciation of $5,365. So in year 3, we come up with a change in estimate. So after 2 years of depreciation, so in year 1 and year 2, I took $5,365 of depreciation. So I took 2 years of that. And so the depreciation I've taken on the asset is $10,730, and that represents my accumulated depreciation. And so in the 3rd year, they come up with some new estimates. They say, okay, now the salvage value is $2,000. That's our new salvage value, and that our remaining years is 3 years left. Okay, so what we have to do on that is we have to come up with our new depreciation that we're going to take each year. We're going to come up with our new depreciation that we're going to take each year. And so you want to take your original cost of $23,860 and subtract our $10,730 from it, and it gives us our new book value of $13,130. That's our new book value. And then we want to subtract the new salvage value of $2,000 and divide the 3 years remaining lives from that. And so that would give me depreciation of $3,710 that I can take in years 3, 4, and 5 is what it ends up doing. So that's what you do when you have a change in estimate. You want to start with getting this new book value and then minus your salvage value and divide it by the years remaining. So similar to what we would have done in the past. So just by doing straight line depreciation. And so that is it.